even more arrogant to think that you'd be able to softly, walk back the transgenderism stance. You can't walk that back. You can't go, maybe we got a little out of control teaching young kids how to use butt plugs. I mean, you can't, you just can't walk that back. You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is episode 258. Episode 258, and we are very excited to have you back this evening for a reaction show.
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday reaction show. We dropped in on the right day. It's probably been 2 weeks since I did an original show. I had a very controversial interview with KSTP here locally. We had the Hodge twins interview air a couple weeks back, so those two things took precedence over the podcast for sure, and with good reason. I had a really, really good time with the Hodge twins. I'm kind of like the honorary Hodge twin, light-skinned brother like myself, big beard, green eyes. It's like only a small handful of us. It's good that two other people like myself are also MAGA and great patriots. So I had a great time going to the West Coast and podcasting with the Hodge twins. Hopefully we'll do it again in the near future. The KSTP interview with Tom Hauser was another great example of why mainstream media and even mainstream local media have become so abysmal, have become so untrustworthy is the right word. They're just untrustworthy. I mean, the premise of Tom Hauser in the interview was basically that in some way or fashion, I had done something, unethical in the way that I raise money, which is strange because I'm probably one of the most ethical people when it comes to campaign finance in the entire country. I couldn't tell you how many of these candidates are given kickbacks, and a lot of the money that's raised from their campaign is explicitly given to some campaign consultant or campaign manager that's doing nothing anyway, right? Or some PR group that they're hiring as basically a quid pro quo to siphon money from the voters and whatnot. It's big business, obviously. It's a lot of money. It's well seen by Kamala Harris's campaign. $1.1 billion gets spread around. That's a lot of money. Doesn't seem like a lot of money when you're $37 trillion in debt, but for one presidential campaign, 1.1 billion, 1.3, 1.4, whatever it ended up being, is a lot of money to get spread around to whatever goods and services that they bought. Even if it's just the television companies and the advertising space that they had to buy. I mean, that's big money. Somebody really had a great payday. Our campaign is a small shoestring campaign. We appreciate all of your viewership and your listenership and your donations, and we know that a lot of people are watching the podcast all across the country, especially with that War Room audience on Getter and Rumble and whatnot. So we appreciate all of your support, and ultimately what Tom was upset about is the MAGA movement is on the rise. We're still on the move, and even young candidates like myself who aren't Donald Trump, which they think they can wait out and then things will get better again for the establishment and the status quo. But the fundraising for myself in particular shows that there is a young MAGA movement that has great political viability. And it's just because we tell the truth, and people want to donate money. Now, on the flip side of that coin, the trouble with political fundraising, campaign fundraising in general, is that the parties, the two parties, both Democrat and Republican, and their establishment leaders in Minnesota, such as a Tom Emmer, who is very high up there in the House, and you got Mitch McConnell, obviously, who's had a long reign in the Senate. Essentially, they are, or they become, the vanguards or the gatekeepers for Republican voter data all across the country, and they will do everything they can to keep that data from candidates like myself, even though I am Republican or ran as a Republican. And so without that data, without those lists, without all of the access to the information of the accumulated Republican data from over the decades, we're kind of forced to play from behind, you could say, but we're forced to play a brand new game, a game from scratch. And in order to do that, sometimes you got to do deals. In my case, do a deal rev share model with another third party group who bundles data, and eventually we end up with the house list. Now mine is up to about 60 to 70,000 donors. Hopefully you're on that list somewhere. And those are people who we can now go back to whenever we want. And when we go back to them, we don't give a percentage away, a rev share away. But initially, in order to get those names, to get access to those names on the front end, we can either rev share with the people who bundled the list, or we could pay an exorbitant fee for access to lease the entire list, for access or leasing the entire list, which in many cases, is a crapshoot, because who knows if the list is even bearing fruit. What we're essentially doing is putting the onus on the people with the list to provide good information, good data on voters that will actually donate, and then they're transferring those donor names over to us for a portion or a percentage, a commission of their initial donation. Completely legitimate, completely above the board. Tom Hauser knows it. He was going out of his way to try and do a hit piece on me because they just can't help themselves. And KSTP is supposed to be establishment Republican. Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is here in Minnesota, establishment Republican, which is no different than being a communist, in my opinion. And here we're going to show this clip of Bill Maher, and Bill Maher is having a huge walk across the Rubicon now, as are a bunch of other Democrats such as Stephen A. Smith and Cuomo. And, there's all these people now that are following in the footsteps of a Tulsi Gabbard and a RFK Jr. and so on and so forth, that are starting to wake up and question. The lights are going on, and they're going, something's wrong here. This narrative of the Democrat Party didn't make sense. What they don't realize is just as soon as they get over to the right of center, and they find themselves in the cohort of establishment Republicans, they will be firmly in the same group of people that they just left, right? So they're going to have to leapfrog that next let's say, locale of the political spectrum. The center right is just as corrupt as the center left. And if you ask me, all the way from the far left to the center right are the same cohort of people. Now, good for us, the MAGA movement has, galvanized a spirit in our country of American citizens who are further than center right, but still understand common sense, and they still recognize the importance, the value of the America First idea and what Donald Trump is brung to politics and what he continues to bring. So we're going to show a clip here of Bill Maher, but my point in saying all of that is the establishment Republicans are the exact same. And in fact, they're the outer bastion of New World Order. Sure, you could say at the beating heart of New World Order and in a sort of proto-globalist or communist political philosophy is the idea of one world government, authoritarianism, sort of a godless and secular, technocratic, scientific, managerial elite. Yes, for sure. But in order to achieve it, you have to still, in most cases, get the consensus of the people. Why? I don't care what form of government you have. The people often outnumber the government. The people often outnumber their elites or their oligarchs. And if there's either two ways you can go about it. You can get their voluntary consent, usually You feed them bread and circuses good enough, then they'll be distracted. They won't pay attention. Or you can give them some type of convenience that is so uh, efficient that they can't help themselves, right? It's kind of that's the drug, right? You got drugs, piracy, slavery, and last but not least, you can just straight, rule with an iron fist, and you can try and fear people into submission. Now, the fear one probably works least of all. It's expensive. Blood is expensive, and eventually people get tired of being pushed around and they revolt. I think in the 21st and 20th century, what modern governments and establishments have been good at doing is using the rise of technology to subtly hide their authoritarianism and their tyranny. When I say subtly hide, I mean that us as Americans, all around the world, even in modern countries, we see the rise of technology as this good and convenient thing. And yes, it does bring a lot of convenience. And for example, I think that AI is going to solve a lot of minor, and I hesitate to even say minor because obviously for individual people and families, they end up being major health issues, right? But AI is going to solve a lot of health issues in a very simple way of what used to be potentially catastrophic for a person or their family. However, it's going to come at a price, and it's not going to be the price of the remedy. It's not going to be a price of the care or the cure or the solution. It's going to be the price you pay as an individual in relationship to your government or the institution providing that service or that medical care. So, these are the things that we have to be mindful of. And I think when you hear of Bill Maher and the Stephen A. Smiths of the world and all these other Democrats going, wait, something's wrong here. We are on track to have an awakening great enough that we might actually come out of this thing. We might actually make it. I'm optimistic. I'm usually
optimistic today.
I'm usually pretty cynical. I'm pretty cynical. But when I see people, because the thing is, what I realize is the Cuomos don't even really understand that the Steve Daines and Tom Emmers of the world are already widely disliked in the Republican voter base or the MAGA movement, right? I mean, they when you come from this two-party mind and the two-party narrative and the two-party echo chamber, you kind of travel over to the other side and you have thoughts about what's going on over there that you didn't have before. I know it personally because I made the same journey, right, of coming up in a black Democrat neighborhood and not really knowing a lot about politics in general. I mean, not that I know a lot about politics, but I didn't know a lot about party politics, inside the sort of nuts and bolts, insider baseball of the parties. And that's why I was attracted to Steve Bannon in the first place. I go, whoa. You hear CNN enough, and they never show Steve Bannon criticizing the establishment Republicans. Why? Because they need to preserve the controlled opposition WWE of Democrat versus Republican. As soon as somebody within their own party goes after somebody in their own party, then the narrative starts to crumble, and you start to see American politics for what it really is. And so that's why I'm optimistic, because if we get enough of that on both sides of the aisle, we'll find ourselves in a place where the establishment is weak in number, they're weak in support, and they end up lacking in leaders. Usually your leaders, the ones who would step up and say those things, tend to have a natural sort of selective top leader quality to them, like a Donald Trump. There's a reason why Joe Biden doesn't have the charisma and the kind of the zeal or the sort of energy that a Donald Trump has, because he's been neutered by the narrative he's had to live by. Go to Joe Biden as a young 28-year-old. He had a little bit of charisma and all of that to him, but the establishment's narrative of just lies and corruption and this sort of just fakeness have just beat him into a pulp. And I think it's actually had a physical, sort of degeneration on his brain. I think there's a real link between people who live lies at that level, that sort of corruption. And I'm talking about white lies, like, hey, I'm going around the corner of the store and I really go to sneak a cig, not that type of lie. I'm talking about widespread, deep, global and nationwide corruption.
Lies that are dependent on other lies.
Yes, lies that are interlocking. Yeah, lies that are interlocking and deep seated. These type of lies. In order to keep these lies up as an individual, it starts to take a physical toll on you. And I think that's she with Joe Biden. But anyway, enough of that. The Republican Party, and we're in a war. I just want to say to everybody that part of the reason why I've been taking a break from the podcast is because I've been doing a lot of these congressional district conventions here in the state of Minnesota. We're in congressional district convention season. I wasn't allowed to speak at CD6, Tom Emmer's congressional shocker. I wasn't allowed to speak at CD7. Now, fortunately, Brett Busman, who worked on my campaign back in 2024 or here recently in this past campaign, ended up winning the chair of Congressional District 7. So that I see as a win, although people change sometimes once they get in a position of power. So hopefully Brett will hold the line up there in CD7 and continue to be America first and MAGA. But I spoke at CD1, where Brian Finstad is, and he got a standing ovation, a lot of MAGA energy down there. I spoke in CD3. I spoke at CD2. So I spoke at about half of them so far. And CD5 is a hellhole, obviously. The Republicans down there in Minneapolis, CD5, first of all, their congressional district has almost shrunk by half its size when I ran in 2022 for Congress, right down there in that congressional district. And that's not a shocker because those Republicans down there in CD5, and I'm talking about in the party now, and more specifically as the leadership of the congressional district, they are completely controlled opposition. I mean, they're in on the deal, hand over fist. So I didn't even ask to speak there because I knew they weren't going to let me. But at the end of the day, that is important. I do think it's important to go around, and even if I have to speak out against the party, the new chair of the party, Alex Plekish, who, yes, David Hand is the former chair. A lot of people didn't like him, thought he was corrupt, thought he was a part of the establishment. I agree with a lot of that. Never had any personal bad interaction with him. He always at least pretended like he was, supportive of me. Turned out that he wasn't, obviously, because communist Michael Broadcorp, online influencer who is always quoted by all the mainstream media to criticize the Republican Party and its candidates, moi, was on the payroll of GOP. Minnesota GOP was actually paying Michael Broadcorp, Kamala Harris endorser, to, I don't know, badmouth me, I guess. All right. It's just mind-blowing. And so the new chair, I mean, you can say what you want, but at the end of the day, when you say things like we shouldn't say the word rhino, Republican in name only, not much different than the Michael Broadcorps. Because Michael Broadcorp was a former Republican whose whole shtick is, I would be a Republican had not the Republican Party gotten so radical after Donald Trump, right? I mean, that's kind of that's his entire MO is Donald Trump and the MAGA movement is too extreme and radical for the Republican Party, and that's why I'm no longer in the Republican Party. The truth is, Michael Broadcorp crashed his vehicle drinking under the influence of alcohol, actually blacked out and crashed his vehicle into not a turnstile, but into a median, and he was having some type of inappropriate relationship with somebody there in the state house, I believe, and that's why he resigned and resigned in disgrace. So it actually had nothing to do with Donald Trump. This was well before Donald Trump came down the escalator. But you see how the corruption sort of festers and builds, and before you know it, you got a guy online talking about how unfit a Royce White is for U.S. Senate. And I'm just sitting here going, dude, you blacked out behind the wheel. And I get it. People do it. Don't get me wrong. I understand.
Yeah,
And I
you're
understand.
blackout. It's not like you're making that decision,
Look,
But
I understand that people struggle with substance abuse. I myself never have. So it's a problem and a vice that's somewhat unfamiliar to me.
Mm.
I don't understand it because I've never thought that way, right? I've never been in such a desperation to escape my life and my existence, my identity, my circumstances that I was willing to devolve into that level of substance dependence. But I know there are a lot of people who do struggle with that,
Mhm.
right? And I feel for them. I just would say that people that struggle with that type of substance abuse and addiction should be very, very slow to throw stones, right? That's what I would say is, you know, uh, campaign finances. Come on, my guy. What are you talking about? You got behind the wheel of a vehicle drunk. You could have killed somebody. Could have killed multiple people. And just to even make that decision is something that is, to me, is just scum of the earth. It really is. You think about somebody's kid. How many people do we know get in car accidents and they got a kid in the back seat, just in their car seat and die in a car crash because somebody had one too many shots at Applebee's and now you're driving home. And why? I mean, why? Get a taxi,
Yeah.
get an Uber, have a friend drive you. I mean, these things are solvable. I mean, these aren't even issues these are unnecessary selfish decisions, right? At a crazy scale. So anyway, these are the type of people that have risen to the top of Republican dialogue here in the state of Minnesota. And I had to look, I, I'm on the warpath. I just won't stand next to these people. I won't kowtow to these people. I won't play nice with these people. I don't want to have some type of fake conversation with them and pretend like we're building a coalition. I don't want to build a coalition with these people, honestly. I just don't. And if not being able to build a coalition or not wanting to build a coalition with them means that I can't win a statewide election because there's so many Republicans in that cohort that I won't be able to win all the then so fucking what? I mean, part of the whole problem with this American political culture is, we have sacrificed winning in numbers for the morals and ethics. And as soon as you start to do that, as soon as you concede that ground, you'll never get it back. So we're getting ready to start here. It's good to be back with you. I'm glad that we're starting with a reaction episode because there's a lot of videos I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks since I've been gone, and I'm excited to share them with you and see what you think as well in the comments. But we're back and we're rolling, and the Sunday call-in show is coming. Tanner, you and I this week will. Well, now I'm going to be here this week, and we'll do a test run of a call-in show and see if we can get it working and functioning the right way. If so, in the next couple of weeks, we'll do the first call-in show and allow you guys to chime in. So let's get rolling. First clip here is Bill Maher talking about his dinner with Trump, and you got to listen to what he has to say. It's epic.
First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did. He laughs. I'd never seen him laugh in public, but he does, including at himself. And it's not fake. Believe me, as a comedian of 40 years, I know a fake laugh when I hear it. I've had so many conversations with prominent people who are much less connected, people who don't look you in the eye, people who don't really listen because they just want to get to their next thing. None of that with him. And he mostly steered the conversation to, what do you think about this? I know, your mind is blown, so's mine. I voted for Clinton and Obama, but I would never feel comfortable talking to them the way I was able to talk with Donald Trump. So MAGA fans, don't worry. Your boy gave me nothing. Just hats Pat's and a very generous amount of time and a willingness to listen and accept me as a possible friend, even though I'm not MAGA, which was the point of the dinner. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you.
Bill Maher, you know, being convinced, being changed, being influenced by Donald Trump's unique personality and leadership, and you know, this is what the future of the Republican Party has to be. And what's funny is the huge knock on Donald Trump from all the never Trumpers, rhinos, Republicans against Donald Trump, whatever you want to call them. The new word for them is rats. Republicans against Trump. I love that. A bunch of rats out there. But their huge critique of Donald Trump is that he can't win middle of the road voters. He can't win moderate voters. He can't convince Democrats to vote Republican. And obviously that's not true because he won. So that's already been debunked in many ways. Yet they'll still try and say that the MAGA way is too extreme. Only it's the only way that's really shown since Clinton the potential to win that middle of the road. And I say Clinton because the Bushes I count as Democrats anyway. So I mean that doesn't really even register on the scale. But the Donald Trump way is working. I mean, it's categorically working. It's verifiably, measurably working. And not only are they willing to vote, but you constantly hear this more deep and genuine sense of change of heart, change of mind, like with Bill Maher here, who, again, Bill Maher is always a guy who I regarded as too smart to go along with the narrative, with the bullshit for too long. Obviously, all of these guys who have huge platforms and are syndicated cable television network hosts have every incentive to play go along and get along. However, Bill Maher is on HBO, so it's a little more adult. He has a little more leash and leeway than, let's say, your average host on ABC, Dateline or whatever it is, one of these more, pop mainstream news channels. But Bill Maher has always been somebody who I thought, he's not going to go along with this forever. And the same with Cuomo. Now, I think Cuomo's still way off on a lot of things, but he's starting to come over. He's starting to come around, and there's a lot of them. So if Donald Trump can do that, I think it's safe to say the way forward for the Republican Party is to double down and triple down on the Donald Trump way. And what is that? It's, hey, I might be rough around the edges. I might say some things people don't like. I may say some things that are, considered uncouth or not, or politically incorrect or not nice, might be mean or, might be divisive. But in a climate, in a culture, in a country where the conversation is has become stagnant around superficial narratives, that is the only way to first break down the bullshit narrative and then have people start to cross lines that were formerly drawn to talk to one another. And that's what Bill Maher did. So we're moving in the right direction. And here you see more of Bill Maher in this next clip pushing back on the transgender wokeism that's being taught in the schools today.
You want the government to ban gender-affirming care for kids?
You want to lose every election? Just keep coming down on the side of parents coming in second in a who gets to decide what goes on with my kid contest.
I'm not. First of all, there are also really important surgeries that people get for their heart, and they go wrong, and somebody dies. And nobody says we must stop the cardiologists. No one says we must stop the surgeons. We say let's.
That's your analogy?
Well, my analogy is only that. Wait, let me finish. Let's not. You gotta go. That's good. That's it. You're just leaving.
That's it.
I'm just leaving.
Bill Maher, everybody.
Thank you.
Bill Maher. I mean, imagine you get Bill Maher to take time away from his globally popular nighttime television show on HBO, and you get him to sit down at a podcast, and I mean, you ask such a stupid question and make such a stupid analogy. He has to get up and cut and run mid-interview. I mean, probably the beginning of the interview. I mean, it's just, and this is the Democrat way. I think that's even a better example of what's going to happen to the Democrat Party.
I just hope it's genuine, because there's one part of me that I just get worried that the trend is starting to become more Republican.
Yeah.
Where I get worried that these left-leaning people are kind of more doing damage control.
Well,
But I mean, like,
yes
this is
and
really
no.
good for everybody.
Yes and no. I mean, if let's say it like this, a part of it is obviously damage control because politics has become such a sport that people are invested in the winning and losing.
Mm.
And so the losing is gonna force people to reevaluate what went wrong just from a strategic standpoint, right? And in that strategic analysis, they'll go, "Hey, well, we were wrong on this, this, and this." They may not genuinely believe they were wrong, and if they did, they probably would have stood up and said something before having to get their ass kicked to teach them the lesson. But getting your ass kicked does sometimes is the you know the springboard to learning hard lessons. I know that as an athlete, was like, hey, you thought you were fucking good until this guy rolled in and put his foot in your ass. Now you realize the deficiencies you have. So I still take it as a good path to them waking up if need be. I do think some of them are just faking it. I do think some of this populism on the left is complete damage control. I don't think Bill Maher is that guy because even though he's more left leaning or has been left leaning, Bill Maher has his whole show has really been one that's tried to draw out the contradiction of all of society in many ways, right? And comedy does that as well. Comedy is going to poke fun at the absurdity in everything. That's just kind of the nature of stand-up comedy or television comedy. So just like even the SNL, right?
Mm-hmm.
SNL is another example. Of course, they're liberal leaning. It's obvious. I mean, their network is liberal leaning. All the TV networks are liberal leaning for the most part. I mean, even Fox News is liberal leaning, right? But still, they're going to poke fun at Kamala Harris. They're going to poke fun at Joe Biden. They're going to poke fun at Obama, right? It's because they have to. I mean, so part of it is damage control, but it's still how are they going to be able to keep a lid on people who watch them seeing the absurdity of what's been going on the whole time? There's no way to put a lid on that. I mean, it would be. I actually more respect the AOCs and the people who are just going to triple down on the radical and they're willing to die on that hill because, it seems to me like even more arrogant to think that you'd be able to softly, walk back the transgenderism stance. You can't walk that back.
Yeah.
You can't go, maybe we got a little out of control teaching young kids how to use butt plugs. I mean, you can't, you just can't walk that back, right? I'd rather see you triple down and quadruple down, like at least that for that type of thing, right? Now, it's different than saying, hey, you know what? Hey, I thought Kobe Bryant was better than LeBron James for a long time. Now, I'm starting to think LeBron James might be better. That's a different thing to walk back. And that's a casual opinion about a trivial sports comparison, right? Teaching young kids at the school to use butt plugs is not something you can just kind of softly walk back and cap how people interpret that. So, hey, if for all of you leftists out there, all of you people, Democrats, who think that you're pulling the wool over somebody's eyes by switching to a more MAGA, open to MAGA stance, you're only doing us a favor because you're not that fucking smart. That's how you guys lost in the first place. It's got nothing to fucking do, really, with the absurdity of the LGBTQ movement. That was just the bomb that went off, right? That was just the cancer at the end. I don't mean cancer, like cancer, but that was just the metastasizing symptoms of what the real problem was. They think they're smarter than they are.
Yeah,
they think they're smarter than everybody else. And the only genuine way forward now is just tell the fucking truth. Just use common sense. You can't teach other people's kids about fucking butt plugs. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And there's no way to dance around it. It is what it is with some shit, right? Let's roll on to the next one.
Here's the deal. The man was impeached twice. He was convicted on 34 felony counts. And the American people still said, he's closer to normal than what we see.
Exactly.
On the left. That's what they're saying. He's closer to normal. Why? Because something that pertains, when you talk about the transgender community, for example, and you're talking about the issues that pertain to less than 1% of the population, the Democratic Party came across as if that was a priority more so than the other issues. And so he comes into office. Now you're talking about childbirth, citizenship, and what have you. He knows that's not going to pass the mustard, but he knows that he made that promise. So when he shows up week 1 on Capitol Hill and he says, this is what we're going to do through an executive order, even though it's going to be shot down through the courts and what have you, he's saying, I kept my promise. A lot of other things that he's going to point to that he's going to try to do. I kept my promise. Then you turn around and you look at the left and you say, what promises did you keep? Now, you might know the answer to that. I'm certainly not questioning your knowledge about that at all. What I'm saying is what resonated with the voter. What voter out there can look at the Democratic Party at this moment in time and say, there's a voice for us, somebody that speaks for us, that goes up on Capitol Hill and fights the fights that we want them fighting on our behalf. They didn't do that. And that's why their behinds are home, and that man is back into the White House, and they want to sit up there and talk. You look at the networks right now, they're talking about, look at it, this is the latest, look at him, here he goes again. Well, you know what here he goes again means? He's doing what he said he was going to do. He promised you he was going to do these things, and he walked into office week 1, and that's exactly what he's doing, and he's saying, y'all do something about it. And when you try to do something about it, he's going to say, look at them now. Now they're concerned about these issues. Were they talking about that during the campaign? Hell no. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Stephen A. Smith throwing down, and just did an interview with the great Stephen K. Bannon, which I appreciate. And you see that Stephen A. Smith is now starting to open up his platform to a number of individuals who are considered on the right, or right-wingers, Republicans, and MAGA, and so on and so forth. Yours truly may be a guest on the Stephen A. Smith show here in the very near future. We're having a couple of discussions about that right now. I'd love to be able to go on the Stephen A. Smith show and give the younger view, interpretation, take on the MAGA movement in American politics as they are today. Be it that I'm the youngest United States, no, sorry, I'm not the youngest United States Senate candidate in American history. I'm the first United States Senate candidate nominee in America that was born in the 1990s. So I'm the first of my generation to go. I'm the youngest one doing it.
Give yourself a little pat on the back for that one.
I was scratching my neck, but pat on the back is good
good
be,
shit, man.
Could be warranted. Well, you know, it's not even that it's that big of an accomplishment for any reason other than I did win a nomination through a primary, which is difficult to do, especially when you have the Tom Emmer Republican establishment working against you at every turn. But it's really not that big of an accomplishment because people my age typically wouldn't go after a U.S. Senate seat. I mean, the United States Senate has become ossified for a reason because we've created a cultural narrative that says people under a certain age, usually under age 50, don't have enough life experience or maturity or wisdom to be effective at that level of legislation. I call bullshit. I'd say the plus 50 crowd, no offense to any of our plus 50s in the audience, but the plus 50 crowd are the ones who fucked it up on both sides of the aisle. So we need some younger people. That doesn't mean we need anybody younger. Just give me anybody younger and it'll be better. That probably isn't a smart way to go about it. I kind of think I'm pretty reasonable as a young person in my generation. And a lot of you boomers out there who look at me and go, hey, can't trust the 34-year-old who will fly off the handle and use the F word or drop an F-bomb. There are some other 30-year-olds out here that I think you probably would do a lot worse with. So keep that in mind, everybody out there. At some point, you're going to have to hand over the keys to the car to some of the new generation or the younger generation, and hopefully that'll be me at some point, and hopefully some others as well. But looking to go on the Stephen A. Smith show coming up.
That happens, man. That would be an awesome.
Actually,
episode.
I think we're set to do it next Wednesday. That quick.
Oh,
so that's gonna be an interesting conversation, especially because me and Stephen A. Smith both come from the sports world, and specifically we both come from the NBA world. So it'd be interesting to see if we end up having a small conversation about that basketball history and basketball in general. So anyway, point is Stephen A. Smith right there showing that there are people on the left who are starting to ask reasonable, sane, logical questions about the narrative and about the strategy of the Democrat Party. And don't be shocked to see a Stephen A. Smith type or Stephen A. Smith himself emerge as a favorite or a front runner candidate uh, in the next presidential election in 2028. And don't be surprised if you see the Democrat establishment show you how they really feel about black men that speak their mind. And when they select for an AOC or somebody like AOC instead of a Stephen A. Smith, right? And Stephen A. Smith is now kind of trying to represent the more moderate, sane, logical, common sense wing of the Democrat thought, of Democrat Party thought, as to where AOC is going to triple down and quadruple down on the radical. Now, I think Stephen A. Smith is having a genuine awakening, and I think part of his awakening is the sports world in particular shows people who are on the inside of it, who live in it like I did. It shows you a certain brand of dishonesty in mainstream media that allows you to then extrapolate it out to the entirety of media and narrative as a whole, right? So he's lived and had a huge success in that microcosm of Disney and ESPN, and I mean the man is as well paid as anybody on television. $40 million, $50 million contract to talk about sports, and I more power to him if he can get it and he can ask for it and they'll pay it, then he deserves it. That's how the free market works. But he's seen firsthand how media works, and there's nobody better than him to one, talk about how narratives are manipulative, but also to sort of be able to deal with main media, right? As a political candidate, I'm kind of unique in that way too, where the mainstream media doesn't really want to interview me because they know that they can't do any gotcha questions. It's like I'm too seasoned in interview in conversation to really hit me with any gotcha questions. So they just steer clear. It'd be fun to see Stephen A. Smith go against the conventional Democrat establishment mainstream media and his new, more America First or MAGA, open mind. So we'll see how that all plays out in the near future. Hopefully I'm doing the Stephen A. Smith show next week, and we'll air that as well on Please Call Me Crazy. So next video.
Think about it. Why is this such...
Okay, stop it before we even started. And I'm hesitant to even do this, because there's a part of me that really believes in the deepest bowels of the deep state that the LGBTQ and this entire far left progressive woke ideology was all a very intentional psyop to create a controlled opposition on the left that distracts us from real issues like the government stealing your money through bills and legislation. And that's what it does. I mean, your average Republican voter is obviously going to be more passionate about the junior high teaching their kids how to use butt plugs than they are the ins and outs of global finance and the Federal Reserve, because one is very approximate to them and the other one seems a world away. And in many cases, it is a world away. But ultimately, it is a distraction, right? It's because, number one, the butt plugs shouldn't even be in the equation. But it's so absurd, it's thrown into the equation to draw your attention to it and away from and that's what this is. When I see this, I can't figure out, just on first pass, I can't figure out if this is a guy joking, right? Kind of mocking the LGBTQ in one of these town hall or school board settings. If this is a real guy, who really believes he's a woman and is dressing like this genuinely through psychosis, neurosis, or if this is like some deep state plant who's put there just to create this absurdity so that we all don't pay attention to, whatever other neocon warmongering global or international policy that's bending us over the barrel, showing us the 50 states, for lack of a better phrase. So it's hard for me to understand, but yet I still show it because you do gotta at least acknowledge the absurdity. We're not going to spend an hour long on it. How many times can I say that a guy who has half his head shaved and the other half of his hair dyed purple is fucking absurd? I mean, I can't spend that much time on it. We'll show you. See what they had to say on the left.
A roadblock. Why have we spent an hour discussing this? Especially, you say you care about the students, but half of you are not sure what gender is, especially transgender. I know the lawyer said transsexual earlier. That's not the correct term. It's transgender. I'm a transgender woman. My pronouns are she, her, and I will only accept those pronouns. I will not be addressed any other way. And in the workspace, I'm protected by that. Our students should be too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. The gender affirming care and the podcast that Bill Maher was on, gender affirming care for kids. Look, we're not going back to a country where kids are going to be taught to use butt plugs and under the guise of gender affirming care or sexual education. It's just not going to happen. So, they can cry foul all they want to. They can say, as a matter of fact, I think we have a clip of, I think it was Keith Ellison, right?
Keith Ellison?
Keith Ellison saying that, announcing that he's going to sue Donald Trump. He's suing the Trump administration for bullying transgender kids by not allowing trans women, I guess you would say, men, to play in women's sports or boys to play in girls' sports. I guess Keith Ellison is suing the Trump administration for protecting girls and women's sports. Shocker.
We'll have to have that clip. I don't have that in the collection of clips I have. We'll have that for next week.
Well, good. We'll do it next week. We'll show you. Anyway, it's not much. It's just him announcing the lawsuit and being real, real boastful about it. Like he's almost bragging, that we're going to stand up for transgender rights and boys playing in girls' sports. It's like, and you guys are still voting for him out there? I mean, there are still Democrats that are on that Ferris wheel. And I just, for the life of me, I can't even, the level of mass formation psychosis, the level of psychological degeneration in that is so profound. It needs to be studied. The advent of wokeism and this whole LGBTQ far left phenomenon. At some point, when we get the institutions back and we can have sane, objective, scientific study, this has to be studied. I just don't understand the logic, and I certainly I get what Keith Ellison is doing. I mean, he's easy to understand. I don't understand who's voting for him. I get what Keith is doing. Keith is going, hey, I got to put my eggs in one basket or the other. I'm going to triple down on the woke. We're going to see, I'm going to triple down on the Marxism and the communism and the LGBTQism. But the people out there that are voting for him, I don't get how you overlook that. Like, in what world is it okay to let a young boy compete against the women? I just don't even understand that. And if you're going to say, hey, let's just let all men and women compete, well, then why does he have to be a transgender in order to compete? Why can't I just go compete in girls' sports as a boy? Why can't I just go compete in women's sports as a man? If it's going to be genderless, then let's just open the genders up and say, hey, we don't even need to do it by gender. If you're good enough to play, if you're strong enough, fast enough, skilled enough, you can compete against them and they can compete against you. Watch how few women and girls make it in the boys and men's sports. And that just tells you the truth. There'll be more men that play in the WNBA or make the team in the WNBA than there'll be women that make an NBA team. It's just what it is. It's physics, the law of physics and nature. So that's all I can say about it. The LGBTQ thing is absurd to me. And it's part of the reason why I got in politics in the first place. When the George Floyd thing happened, I was shocked to discover how prominent the LGBTQ activism was surrounding a situation where a black man had just died. I mean, when I heard Black Trans Lives Matter, my mind exploded. I didn't even know what trans was at the time. I had no clue, honestly.
You want to know a fun little fact
Go
about the
ahead.
pride flag? So you know how they have that slash of the brown and the black?
Mhm.
That was done on 4chan by a bunch of people to make fun of it. It was to lob black people into the transgender LGBTQ description.
Mhm.
It was done as a complete joke, but now we see that flag everywhere.
They took the
And
flag and
they
used it.
took it and used it, and the whole time it was, I guess you could call it a psyop. It was a joke psyop by a bunch of computer nerds on 4chan.
Yeah.
So it's wild how far that's come when you know the
There it
source
is.
of it was just a joke.
There it is. We have a clown society, a parody. There's a
Yeah.
reason why it seems like a parody, because in some cases, such as this, it actually was. But let's look at the next clip here. With this is a more reasonable and more let's say common sense approach about the middle of the road, and how the two parties have kind of formed up against each other, with the Democrat establishment just insulting uh, the MAGA movement and insulting anybody who would basically follow anything that Donald Trump has done, which is crazy because he's obviously done so much that's good and helpful and makes sense. So let's listen to NBC anchor Brian Williams here.
I think it's insulting when members of the working class, which the Democratic Party has lost entirely in our lifetimes, to insist the economy is doing great. A 12-pack of Bounty is $40. Rich folks don't feel that. Poor folks already switched to Sparkle during the COVID, during the lockdown. And I think telling them that the NASDAQ is gangbusters is further insulting. It's insulting. I think the biggest unforced error of the Biden administration by far was the border. To tell people it's not a problem is insulting. For the working class to see incoming migrants getting welcome bags, debit cards, and motel rooms is probably insulting.
Yeah. And what he's saying there is the limousine liberals have a lot of nerve calling the hardworking, poor, lower and middle class deplorables. More of the same from why Hillary Clinton lost the election, and then they doubled down on that sort of Democrat motif, and they tried to run it again. And hey, they could say that they won in 2020, but I would say they cheated. There are a lot of Republicans out there that would argue that there was no cheating in 2020, which now seems very ridiculous to me in light of what happened in 2024. Hey, you get to decide, you get to judge. Hopefully, we'll have some investigations and if need be, some prosecutions and incarcerations when it comes to the security of our elections. Again, it's not me saying that the machines aren't secure. This was Amy Klobuchar and Kamala Harris demonstrating before a Senate committee that the machines are not secure. And it's all, half of it is, I think people are invested in the outcome of the machines not being secure. Half of it is people just don't want to deal with the implications of the machines not being secure, because it would shatter the facade that is the American elections. Am I saying don't participate, don't vote, don't participate in your precinct or BPOU because the machines aren't secure? No, it's the opposite. I'm telling you that's exactly what you need to do. You need to get more involved so that we can finally get the machines and the rest of the election secure. The only way we do that is by having people elected who would fight for that kind of thing, such as myself and many others as well. Let's roll the next clip.
Do you regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity? He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline.
Lie.
And I hadn't at that
Go back,
point.
run it back. Look at the face. He just gives her the, come on now.
And I hadn't at that point.
You did not see any decline from 2024 Joe Biden to 2021 Joe Biden?
Not when I said that. You know, the thing is, he was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him. Live event. I had meetings with him a couple of times.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? Elizabeth Warren leading the charge, carrying the flag for the far left progressive movement, or at least she was for a long time. Elizabeth Warren's touted as one of these, fire breathing sort of, far left politicians. She's going to say it like it is. Well, right there, she didn't say it like it was. She failed to say it like it was. How it was, Joe Biden was in radical, significant cognitive decline in front of everybody's eyes, and the media said, don't believe your lying eyes. He's completely fine. And that was also Amy Klobuchar and Kamala Harris and everybody else. I just don't know how they come back from that loss of credibility. I think here's what I say. I think that the Democrat edifice, the Democrat worldview is rotten down to the core. And so once you understand it at a historical level and you understand where the modern American Democrat Party comes from in terms of its philosophy, you wouldn't vote Democrat again. You'd understand that the fight is within the Republican Party to keep the Republican Party sane and more American in its worldview and in its platform than the Rhino neocon faction that effectively is just Democrat light, and in some cases even worse than the Democrats. But what I will say is, I think I would suggest that the entire Democrat Party revamp the whole slate of usual suspects. The entire cast of the Democrat Party needs to be revamped. And maybe you can leave what's my guy's name, a big guy, Fetterman. Maybe you can leave a Fetterman. Maybe you can leave a Dean Phillips. A Dean Phillips has played moderate enough in some cases, and others. I mean, for those of us in Minnesota who are close enough to Minnesota politics to know, Dean Phillips isn't much of a moderate himself, but at least in the last election, he was willing to step aside from Joe Biden and go, I'm not rolling with this. There's a future for me in politics, and I'm not willing to burn my credibility. I'm not willing to burn my social capital on Joe Biden because this is too obvious. I'm not going to be able to live this down when people go back in the future and look at the video of us saying that this guy is as sharp as he's ever been and he's falling down every time he's on camera. How am I going to come back from that? Those people are the only hope for the modern Democrat Party. And they would do well to do some restructuring really quick. And for all you Republicans out there, be weary because they will. They are going to. The major donors in the right now, the plots are being made against their own. This is where it's going to get. This is where it's going to get dirty. This is where it's going to get ugly. There's going to be some backstabbing here. This is where you're going to see stories and planted and people being set up and all kinds of stuff happening to get the current Democrat class of front runners out of the way, so a new class can emerge that has any credibility. Because I mean, how can Elizabeth Warren come back from this? The only way is if the people in her area, in her district, or in her state, or whatever the case may be. The only way is if they are so stupid or so brainwashed or so politically, what do you want to say? So politically invested in the Democrat Party that they'll vote for somebody no matter what they say. That's the only way you could vote for these people anymore. Their credibility is shot. And I remember they ran the clip of me during the campaign. They try to use me as an example of like being a MAGA cult because I said I wouldn't care if Donald Trump came out to the podium, pulled his pants down and took a shit. I still would never vote for these Democrats again. And they used that. They said, oh, look at these MAGA people. We told you it's a cult. That's weird. He wouldn't care if Donald Trump took a shit in public. He'd still vote for him. Well, to me, what Elizabeth Warren just did there is taking a shit in public. See? And that's what I think people have to start to wrap their minds around is there is nothing worse than that level of lie. It's one thing to lie. It's one thing to try and dance around the truth. It's one thing to try and make your worldview seem like it's more logical when you know that it's not. But it's another thing when everybody watched you lie and they all know you're lying and you just double down on the lie anyway. I mean, there's a level of depravity to that is hard to describe. The only thing to say is it's depraved. Yeah. And it's far worse than some guy than again, if Donald Trump came out on the stage at a rally and pulled his pants down and took a shit and said, this is for the media, this is for the mainstream media there in the back, and there was a big hot pile of shit on the stage, that would be far less offensive than what Elizabeth Warren just tried to do in that soundbite there. I mean, that's just what my opinion. Because, it's one thing to pull your pants down in front of me and take a shit. It's another thing to insult my intelligence. And I think American citizens have to become much more offended by the attempts to insult their intelligence than they are at any vulgarity or profanity or mean tweets. And obviously a lot of Americans are starting to make that transition, right?
I think it goes to your point that people just need to get more involved, because I think the reason people still vote for these candidates is they don't see the lies.
True.
They don't have any clue.
But come on, that one though?
That one isn't.
I mean, could anybody really even argue that Joe Biden wasn't in decline? Then there was this whole weird moment where the mainstream media tried to convince us, well, Donald Trump's in decline too.
Yeah.
Right? They were like, well, did you see him in this interview or in the golf course here? Or he kind of went, glossy-eyed in this interview. Or they were trying to pull out little instances to make it seem like Donald Trump at his age, which is older as well, was even comparable to Joe Biden's decline. It was ridiculous. It's like, come on, dude, you're talking about a guy who's still shooting big numbers on the golf course. It's like we can fuck the golf course. We can visibly see the guy who has more energy. I sat there and watched Donald Trump stand up and talk for an hour and a half at the Trump rally there in St. Cloud, completely, off the cuff for most of it. So come on. I mean, who's believing that? I mean, you just got to be ideologically possessed, captured, to try and front that lie. And I hope a lot of American citizens who voted for Joe Biden or have been Democrats for a long time have the courage to stand up now and go, we're not going to be tied to these lies like this anymore. We just got more. I'd rather you not vote. Just don't vote. Just abstain your vote at least. But don't vote for these Democrats. Vote for the Green Party or find an independent candidate to vote for. That's fine. But just don't count your vote with the Democrats just because you don't want a Republican to win. That's not honest. There's a real lack of sacred honor in that, in my opinion. Next clip.
I tend to more agree with President Trump than I did with President Obama on Bush on trade. The whole idea for China manipulating their currency, I learned about them when I visited with Macney. I visited Crucible Steel here in Syracuse, and they were telling me back then how their steel products had an unfair advantage because China was manipulating its currency. That's how the whole issue came to the fore, because I happened to visit Crucible Steel back in 2004 or 5, sometime like that. So I hope he's really tough on China, on both North Korea, and on treating us fairly in terms of trade.
Well, yeah. I mean, shocker to hear Chucky Schumer say something so true, because the Unipart, there's one example of a geopolitical issue that the Uniparty has come down on the wrong side of consistently. It would be our trade policy and our China policy, and that is ultimately going to be the new war that's fought. And you see a lot of arguments and discussions and opinions being flown around right now about Donald Trump's tariffs and the sort of reorienting of the global market that Donald Trump has pursued here in the earliest months of his presidency. I, for one, was on the record saying we should charge them 200%. And when I said it about a year and a half ago, I said I'd start at 50% on day one, and it'd go up 5% every 2 weeks until it reached, however, indefinitely, until American manufacturers came home, or they all ran over to China permanently. You want to go live in a country where the state owns the corporation, then go do that. But you're not going to enjoy the freedom of small business and entrepreneurship, the nation of shopkeepers that America's Constitution affords you, while simultaneously, doing an underhanded deal and a backhanded deal that kills American working class citizens and gouges them, while you do business with a country that owns all of their corporations outright. There is no private ownership or entrepreneurship or nation of shopkeepers in China. It's all state owned. So if you want to play business in that, then you go over there and you do business with them. But you're not going to double dip. I used to hate that. You go to a party or barbecue when I was a kid, even I couldn't stand it. You go to a kid's birthday party and you find that one kid who wants to double dip that chip. I remember there was a kid, I was at a birthday, just totally on a tangent, but there was a kid at a pool party I was at. I must have been 12 years old, and I saw it coming. He had that chip in his hand, and he went for that salsa, and he already got his fingers down in the salsa, right? And I'm just looking at him like, this dirty son of a bitch,
12-year-old Royce.
Yeah, 12-year-old. I was a ass kicker. I'm just looking at him. This fucking sandbagger. He's gonna do it. He's got fucking sand on his hands. We're at the beach. It's a pool party. It's a beach, and he's got a little bit of sand on his fingers. He takes that chip, runs right up to the picnic table. He takes that chip and he hits that salsa, and I could just see the fingers touch the salsa, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go. I'm already thinking in my head. I can't go back to that salsa. It's over, right? I know that. Now I'm watching everybody else, and sure enough, that kid took a bite of that chip, and he had that bitten chip, and he was going back in, and I was sitting right there, just close enough to the, and I smacked that chip right out of his fucking hand. I said, "Are you serious?" And he looked at me like, "What? Like, what did I?" Dude, you're going to double dip that chip after you already put your sandy hands in the salsa? Just no home training. My point is, nobody likes a double dipper, right? So these corporations that, well, the price is going to go up on the tariffs. Oh, you're going to hurt them. The Americans are going to feel it. Yeah, that's because they didn't see you double dip that chip, right? If they would have seen you, if they would have actually understood what it was for you to double dip them sandy fingers in that fucking salsa, they'd be ripe and hot pissed. But the things that happen in secret in the dark are the biggest enemy to the American people. A lot of that happens in business and finance. So here we have O'Leary, who I think is kind of an asshole, to be honest. He's famous for being on Shark Tank, right? And I think he's kind of an asshole, but he does do business, and he has become one of the accepted supporters of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement on mainstream media, whether it be CNN. I think he's on CNN here, if I'm not mistaken, from the background behind him. But, he's one of the guys who they let come on and talk about these things. And here he articulates the relationship, the trade relationship with China brilliantly. Let's see the clip.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariff? What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They've brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough.
There it is. 400%. O'Leary says he wants 400% tariffs. He went higher than me. So I agree with him. So, and here's another good example. I don't necessarily like O'Leary's personality. I think he's kind of tight and just kind of rigid and an asshole. At least that's his public persona. That's kind of who he was on Shark Tank. A few times I was able to drop in and watch Shark Tank. And in general, I think on Shark Tank, a lot of times maybe that's scripted, right? And they're mean to a lot of those entrepreneurs. I mean, you're talking about people who are inventing things and trying their hardest and, chasing after a dream, and it's kind of put on for a spectacle of just, casual nighttime entertainment for the audience and the onlooker viewer. But a lot of those people put a lot of hard time and effort into those companies and those inventions and those products and services, and some of the kind of TV banter of it just ends up being flippant and snarky and kind of mean to those entrepreneurs. So, as a person who is an athlete, and I side with the entrepreneur. I side with the small business owner. I side with the inventor. I side with the person who's chasing the dream, and not the person who's kind of casting some snap time opinion about it. But all that being said, I have no problem saying O'Leary's 1,000% right on that issue. And we got to be that way about policy. Now, there's somebody who I may not necessarily like his personality, but I can come to agreement with on policy. Yeah. And so I'm not a person who doesn't want to build any coalition with anybody who I don't like or doesn't agree with me, or who I wouldn't, want to hang out with, on a layover at an airport, as they say. There are some really cool people who you would want to hang out with on a layover at an airport. But that's not the basis of which I need to work with people politically. However, there's a big difference between O'Leary and Michael Broadcorp. And I don't want to work with the Michael Broadcorps. I don't want to work with people who want to fund the Ukraine war. And at the moment I hear O'Leary saying that he wants to fund the Ukraine war, he's going in that bucket too. Even if his China policy is I'm in agreement on. And it's like Jeffrey Sachs. I hear Jeffrey Sachs saying a lot of things out there that I'm in agreement on. But his China policy is horrendous. And so, hey, I can't agree with him. I can't roll with him. So anyway, next clip. More from China here.
China will fight to the end, as the government has declared, and China has now imposed the retaliatory tariff up to 125% against all U.S. exports to China. Now, if things are not handled well, this means complete stop of China-U.S. trade, both ways. No goods exported from the United States to China, and complete stop of everything made in China to the United States. This is decoupling. If the United States wants to really welcome this, China will reciprocate, and causing the breakup of China-U.S. relations. Whether this will evolve from peace to war, well, let's all be prepared. In essence, what China now declares is that it is prepared to fight to the end. Trade war, tariff war, technology war, or real war. So the ball is in Trump's court. You decide, and I will reciprocate. I will never succumb to the U.S. pressure. And this is the moment of truth. China wants to defend free trade. The United States wants to destroy free trade.
Well, what do you know? The term free trade. Oh boy. Now we see. And I hate to say I told you so. I mean, I get a little slight enjoyment out of it, like all of us do. That pride and vanity and ego. We get that slight enjoyment of saying I told you so. But I really, really would much rather be proven wrong more times than not. And here's one of them. I told you all that the rhino neocon faction of the Republican establishment and their free trade bullshit is a symptom of communism. And what do you find here but China, one of its emissaries or spokespeople, advocating for the continuance, degeneration of America, the decline of the West, the rise of China, the second law of thermonuclear dynamics, the inexorable rise of China, and the managed decline of the West. And what is the moniker of which the Chinese are now going to fly their flag on the global stage? Free trade. Oh, free trade. It's like a Republican wet dream. These silk stocking, silk tie, lapel pin wearing Finocchios at the country club who call themselves Republicans love their free trade. Well, if you and the communists are in agreement on economic policy, I tend to think you're probably leaning more of being a communist than you are of being a patriot-loving American. Free trade. Oh, and now China's willing to go to war, whatever war, technological war, trade war, technology war, or biological war, kinetic war. They're willing to go to war. They're saying it. We're willing to do it. We'll go wherever you want to go. Hey, the one place they're not going to bring that war to, and that's on our shores. At least not a kinetic war. Bio war, different. Oh, and we got to be ever vigilant about bio wars. Why? Because we let mad scientists tinker around with vaccines and diseases and viruses and everything else in secret, without our knowledge, more importantly, without our attention and care. And now we don't know which one of these next flus or measles or viruses is engineered or made in a lab or leaked in purpose or sent as a weapon. We don't know. We don't know what's happened, really. We don't know what's going on in that upper echelon scientific world. So we kind of just got to hold our breath and ride the wave with some of that. But the writing's on the wall. We are now engaged in an all-out war with China. There's no way around it. There's no denying it. China's saying it. They've been saying it. People just denied it, naive, didn't want to listen when Steve Bannon says, we are in an asymmetric war with the CCP. So, oh, you're a China hawk. Oh, you're fear-mongering. Oh, the Chinese are our friends. They're our partners. They need us as much as we need them. Well, we're about to find out, is what you just heard there. Next clip.
Am I to pull from this that none of the vaccines, including the COVID vaccine, has not been properly tested?
Absolutely. Not a single childhood vaccine, I could tell you, has gone through a placebo-controlled clinical trial of sufficient duration and power to assess that it was safe before being injected into millions of children in America.
All right.
I can say that categorically, not because it's my opinion, but because anybody who goes to the FDA website could see that for themselves by looking at the package insert and the underlying clinical trial documents that are available on the FDA website.
Very good.
Boom. To echo what our great friend Dr. Pierre Corey said recently in our episode, which is now gone viral in the last couple of days on X, where Dr. Pierre Corey says the one thing he would change if he had the reins of power is he would deconstruct or destroy the entire vaccine apparatus, root and branch, that it's destroying the health of our children and consequently our American citizens and our entire country from the inside out. More on the front of vaccines having not been safety tested properly, and you all can go look it up to yourselves, where YouTube and a lot of other big tech companies basically canceled and censored people who suggested there was anything questionable about the vaccine or vaccine process in general. Now we're living in a different world where many people, including Yale University, came out with a study saying that people who got vaccinated are suffering from long-term conditions that could be catastrophic. I never got vaccinated, at least not COVID vaccinated. But, hey, I get it. I get it's a scary time. Better start thinking about detoxing and fortifying your system in other ways, because we have been, in my opinion, we have been hit with something that is very, very dangerous and could potentially be cataclysmic to the health of our nation and our people. So be watchful for developments around the vaccines and other medical stuff too. Food. I mean, it's the whole food industry. Wow, what a number has been done. And the thing that I think is real satanic about it is that these scientific elites act like they don't believe in God. It's not that they don't believe in God. They don't have any faith in God. They don't worship God. There's a difference. They believe in God. They know God exists. Their secularism is a political costume. It's a tool to get other people to lose faith in God and not have any worship of God. But they know God exists. And here's a good example. for all of their wickedness, all of the poisonous, toxic things that we put in our body, it's a true testament of God's genius in our design, that the human body is resilient and can withstand a lot of damage, a lot of trauma, a lot of poison, a lot of toxin. You think about little diseases that we get here and there, whether it be Lyme disease or ticks or, it be viruses or chicken pox or whatever it is. And yeah, do people die? Absolutely. But do people survive? Yes, a lot of people survive. And that's because the human body is very resilient. So all of these secular, scientific, managerial elites, they know how resilient the human body is, and they've used that to justify the continuation of their mad science experiments. They know, hey, some people are going to die, but a lot of people are going to survive, and we'll be able to advance on to the next round, chapter of what it is that we're trying to do scientifically. So be mindful. It's even in the food, and I'm trying to be as mindful as ever. And there's a point where you get kind of cynical and you go, shit, everything's poison, so what do I do? And I understand that. I deal with a lot of the same frustration myself, whether it's, oh, this is organic or this is grass fed or this is, whatever the case may be. You still don't really know where that shit comes from. And the problem is you can't really verify through packaging, because we all know that the packaging process can be propaganda and lies, and we've seen it happen with our own eyes. So, but still, all that being said, be mindful and do the best you can out there with what you're putting in your body, especially when it comes to medicines from big pharma. And that's the best advice I can give for now. Definitely something corrupt going on there. Tanner, what do you think about big pharma and food? And as a young person, how do you navigate what we're uncovering with some of this stuff now, with vaccines?
Yeah, so well, with food at least, I've definitely become a lot more mindful that I'm looking at ingredient lists, and I just always have the rule of thumb of like, okay, if I'm looking at cereal, if I was to make this myself, do the ingredients make sense? If it's like five different chemical names that I don't understand, and sometimes you'll look into it because some chemical names, it's really nothing. They're just putting the chemical name on it. The thing that irritates me, makes you feel like everything's poisoned, excuse me, is everything has natural flavoring. It'll say natural flavors at the end of the, and that's like 250 different chemicals that they don't even like show you what it is. It's like a trademark thing that they have to keep it secret.
Yeah.
So you can be holding the package, it says organic, but then you see at the very end it says natural flavoring, and that's just the term for whatever they put into it.
Yeah.
So that gets hard. The vaccines thing, I'm terrified, and I want to find the truth because right now I have a 5-year-old and she's about to enter the school system. She's already had a bunch of vaccines,
Yeah.
and I'm just worried because
Yeah.
like I don't want to. I don't know.
Yeah, rightfully so. And even my we didn't give my kids the COVID vaccine. None of my kids got vaccinated for COVID, but on a routine doctor checkup, it was the DTaP. My kids were given the DTaP shot just a couple of weeks back, and I didn't go to the doctor's appointment, and all of a sudden they come home and say, "Oh, they got a couple shots." Now I almost lost my shit.
Yeah.
Mom was very apologetic, and she's like, I didn't realize that we, but and that's all the American people, right? So, and I got the DTaP too when I was young, right? So I'm not saying that the DTaP is going to be catastrophic for people, although I do think it probably has some health effects that we don't realize, compromising health effects that we don't realize. But hey, there are people who got vaccinated and they lived to be 90. Like I said, the human body is resilient. The question is, did somebody know that these things were harmful, and did they go forward with it anyway without informing the American people? That answer seems to be an overwhelming yes. We should be able to know who those people are, and they should face some type of prosecution. That level of corruption and lies should be brought before the courts and a jury of their peers to determine the level of culpability. So we'll see how the whole vaccine thing unfolds.
I would say though, my biggest issue with big pharma, and it's spread on to everybody, is this idea that we need to fix ourselves.
Yeah.
I get really sick of that because like your point of like we're resilient, we are humans, way back when we were surviving in the woods. Why is everything about like, oh, we need to protect them for this? Like we're treating human bodies as if they're broken right as soon as they're born.
Right.
And I just disagree with that. I think that's the
Yeah.
worst way to approach medicine, is thinking that everybody's broken.
Yeah. Fasting is one of the things that I just did it. I went on a 4-day fast, a 96-hour fast, and it got rough around the end of day 2. But early in day 3, the hunger pains went away. By the end of day 3, I was feeling great. I could feel my body regenerating. I could feel my body kind of cleansing itself. By day 4, the end of day 4, I was very tired, obviously, lack of energy. But when I broke that fast and put that first, bone broth mushroom soup in my body, I could feel my metabolism was reset, and I lost a bunch of weight. I'm down right now, lost a bunch of weight, and it felt better. And my stomach pains that I've been having, gastritis, acid reflux. I had acid reflux so bad I thought I was having a heart problem, really. And that obviously alleviated because it just gave my pipes a break. So fasting obviously does wonders. A lot of good scientific study behind fasting. So I would deeply encourage people to incorporate fasting into their program. Start off with a 3-day fast, just to reset the body. I won't say do a 4-day, but a 3-day fast even. You should probably do a 4-day fast once or twice a year, I'd say, something around a long fast, 4 to 5 days. Make sure you stay hydrated. And then alternate day fasting, 24 hours on, 24 hours off eating. Eat one day, the next day you don't eat. Eat one. It's real easy, by the way, if you really get into the swing of it. And a lot of people do it unintentionally anyway because of their work schedule, and they don't even know that they're doing it. But let's say I eat at 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm done by 8:30, 9. Go until 9 the next night before you eat again. That's a full 24 hours. And there are huge health benefits to that, right? And if you can extend it beyond that to 36 hours, if you can say, hey, I'm going to skip food the next day and I'll eat the following morning, right? So I'll eat at 8 p.m. tonight, and then tomorrow I'll skip food and I won't eat until 8 in the morning the following day, 36 hours. If you can get yourself doing that, I guarantee you're going to feel better. I guarantee your body's, own regenerative process is gonna give you some great benefits. So it's working for me right now. Like I said, my weight's down and I feel better than I have been recently. So next clip.
It's like Libya. We were the ones that caused Gaddafi's death because Hillary Clinton played a game over there, and I was the one that went over there during the war. Gaddafi asked me to come over. I took a Biden staffer and a Bush staffer and a film crew leader from ABC One in New York, Larry Menti, with me, and a cameraman, because I didn't want the CIA to set me up. I hand-carried the letter back from Gaddafi offering to resign. The U.S. didn't want him to resign. They wanted to kill him.
Why?
Because Gaddafi, and I met him 3 times. I took Biden on my second trip to Libya, by the way. He went with me when I spoke to the whole country. At every meeting I had with Gaddafi, he wanted 2 things. He wanted to unite the African continent into a group of nations economically, like the European economy. He wanted to base it on the gold standard. And the U.S. and Europe didn't want that. And the other thing is they wanted control of his oil, and they wanted control of his sovereign wealth. So Gaddafi had to go. That's outrageous, and it's wrong.
Yeah, but that, I think, sounds right to me.
I mean, but we've allowed so many of our kids to be drawn into conflicts, to be killed. And these people doing this they've never served in any capacity in our country. They've never been in the military. They've never served on a fire ground. And it's outrageous that they think they can get away with this and sit back and make all this money.
Former congressman there, right? I think he was in the Congress, if I'm not mistaken, which is why he was able to be involved enough to hand carry a letter to Gaddafi, or hand carry a letter back for Gaddafi and back then. And, again, I hate to be the one to say I told you so, but when I was running the 2009 UN speech from Omar Gaddafi a year ago, I remember it must have been, was it Deadspin or somebody? One of the mainstream media outlets used me running the Muammar Gaddafi speech as a way to say or imply that I'm a conspiracy theorist, or that I was, what they really tried to do was use it against me for the Christian and Republican right, who is deeply afraid of anything Muslim, right? And so Muammar Gaddafi would fit that bill. And they tried to use it to discredit me and say that I was like a Muslim apologist, Muslim extremist apologist. And Muammar Gaddafi's such a bad guy. And here you got Tucker Carlson, doesn't get more mainstream conservative, not mainstream anymore, but it was mainstream conservative. And another guy who I'm sure was a Republican congressman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, he served 1987 to 2007. He was in the 7th District of Pennsylvania.
Okay, a Republican, right?
Yep.
Okay, Republican congressman from Pennsylvania for about 20-some years. And they're just finally blowing the whistle on this shit and saying it like it was. The neocon, the security state in America, both Republican and Democrat, wanted Muammar Gaddafi dead. And it wasn't because he was mean to his people. It wasn't because he was a tyrant. It wasn't because he used white phosphorus on his own Libyan population. It was because he wanted to unify Africa, the African nation, the African Union, as he had tried to, unify the Arab Union. Remember, he was the president of the Arab Union before he washed his hands of the Arab Union and said, "Oh, you motherfuckers are sellouts," which a lot of them are, by the way. And he said, "Hey, okay, well, I'll try and do it with the African nations because Libya's in Africa anyway. It's Arab, it's an Arab country, but it's in Africa, continental Africa." So they wanted him dead. And what did he want to do? He wanted to create one currency for Africa, and go on to a gold standard, create a United States of Africa, a dollar of the United States of Africa, and we should have supported that. And the fact that we didn't is gonna maybe prove to be a fatal flaw in our attempt to maintain stability on the world stage. It was a huge mistake of foreign policy that you can lay at the feet of these strange Finocchio Atlanticists, proto-globalists, pro-China. I mean, they're communists. That's just what it comes down to. And now the funny thing is you could argue that Muammar Gaddafi was a socialist or a communist, but in reality, he was trying to create a sort of free market, independent trade agreement between the continent of Africa and the rest of the global economy. And we should have supported that. We should have helped him do it. Because fortifying Africa in light of a more American style of economy would have been a bastion against the threats that we now face from the CCP. Instead, the CCP took our money from these fat, greedy oligarch fuckheads. They took our money and they went back to Africa and built roads and airports as shiny objects to leverage and negotiate for Africa to let China recolonize it. And that's how geopolitics really works, my friends. You got to understand. This is what's really going on. This is what the LGBTQ, as much as it is absurd, this is what the LGBTQ WWE political theater is distracting you from. That geopolitic right there. That Muammar Gaddafi was killed because he wanted to create a currency, a united currency of the continent of Africa, and the Europeans and many Americans as well, the Western kind of European power base is getting too much money out of Africa. They're stealing natural resources. This is why me and Professor Penn say that the British business model is drugs, piracy, and slavery. That is the perfect example right there. Muammar Gaddafi, they killed him. And the Americans would have done well to separate ourselves from the Europeans then and say, we want a strong Africa. We want a strong and independent Africa. We want China to have to, if China moves west, the Pacific theater is an entirely different, implication, right? It's an entirely different thing. But if Africa wants to, if China wants to move west in its conquest with one belt, one road, they got to go through a strong and independent Africa. Instead, what did they run into? They ran into a weak Africa. They ran into an Africa that had been manipulated, and brainwashed into short-term gratification of airports and railroads. So, we made a huge mistake there. But here, I'm not the only one saying it. At 32 years old, I was saying, and people were going, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. Muammar Gaddafi, he's not a good guy. I don't give a fuck if you think he's a good guy or not. I really don't care if he's a good guy or not. We got bad guys here, like Donald Trump said when they asked about Putin. Oh, Putin's a killer. We got a lot of killers here in America, too. A lot of killers all over the world. The question is, what's the strategic interest for America? The strategic interest of a strong Africa was a bastion against an expansive China. And we missed the boat on that. Now, here we still have a chance. We still have a chance to go into Africa and clean this up and go, you know what? We'd rather be allies. We'd rather you be independent like America is than get sucked up into this globalist free trade scam that China has pushed into the future in Davos, Switzerland, and Brussels, and whoever else. We'd rather Africa be a bastion of independence like America, and that would benefit us. We'll see if people are wise enough and smart enough to do it, or if the latent racism of the New World Order is going to prevail, where Bill Gates wants to depopulate the African and Arab nations because they can't sustain their population growth. Oh, fuck yourself, Bill Gates, you scumbag motherfucker. And that's what I'm saying. You know, the Bill Gates of the world on one hand will talk about racism and systemic or social injustice and white supremacy and all this other brouhaha. When you really look at the way that they spend their money and the way they use their power and influence, they are trying to preserve a British business model and a British foreign policy to keep Africa weak. And the African people should be pissed about it. Just don't be pissed at all of us Americans. Don't be pissed at the MAGA movement. I'm saying it right here, right now, on behalf of the MAGA movement. We would invite and encourage a strong and independent and unified Africa. Just don't get swept under the seas. Don't get tricked into thinking the CCP loves Africans. The CCP is far more racist than any of their European counterparts. Trust and believe. They have their own race of people, and they think themselves naturally better than everybody else that walks the earth. That's the truth. Next clip.
They are the only high-rise buildings in the world that have ever come down from an airplane hitting them. And those buildings, I read the report from the architect who designed them. They were designed to withstand an airplane hitting the building and standing tall.
And especially Building 7, which had no plane hit it. Right.
No plane hit it. And the building just, you can see it when you watch it on TV, it just implodes straight down. And what really got me again was Oriol Palmer, the Italian chief, arising on the...
Well, tell us who he was. What is...
Okay, Oriol Palmer was one of the most inspirational battalion chiefs in New York.
FDNY.
FDNY, who immediately, in very good shape, had a family, a couple of kids, went into the building as soon as they got on the scene, took the elevator up to the 40th floor, got off the elevator, and you can hear him on the comm system say, I'm here, 40th floor, we're going to start walking up the stairwells. Every 5 floors, he radios back to communication. I'm on the 50th floor. Everything's okay. We're on floor 60. Everything's okay. He's going up. Every so many floors, he gives a report. He reaches the 78th floor, the floor of impact. He comes out of the stair tower. And as clear as you listening to me here, and I know I get passionate and I apologize to your listeners for that. He says, we're on floor 78, the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires and we can handle them. 1 minute later, the whole building collapses. That's not normal. That is not acceptable. That is not what happened.
And this is on tape?
It's on tape. The film is called Bravo 7. And if your viewers want it, if they contact you, I'll give it to you. It's free. It was produced not by Hollywood. It was produced by firefighters. And it includes the footage, including the firefighter, the footage of the firefighter communication between him and the command center. You can hear him as plain as day saying, I'm on the impact floor, floor 78. We have 2 fires here. We can control them. And he's comfortable. He's not worrying about the building collapsing. He just walked up 38 floors. And the whole building collapses. Tucker, it's a big lie.
Oh. Whoa. Former Congressman Kurt Weldon throwing down about 9/11. Again, a Republican congressman of Pennsylvania blowing the whistle in what is a very, very controversial opinion. Not in our world, not in the MAGA world, not in the red pill world, but in mainstream America, kind of average dinner table America or nighttime news America. This is very controversial. And it's ironic because, again, Republicans, who again I counted as Democrats with the Bush junta, were in power when 9/11 took place, and it was the springboard for the current geopolitical foreign policy and security state that exists today. 9/11 was the advent of the current security state, deep state apparatus that we have now. And there's another video out there where Jeffrey Sachs, again, who I disagree firmly on China policy with, but where he talks about a document that basically came out of Langley or came out of the Department of Defense or whatever agency it was, whatever department it was. But anyway, it was a document that basically outlined a seven-country, a seven-war plan or agenda surrounding Israel. I think it was Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and maybe there was one other, Yemen, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it was a seven-country war, seven-country agenda that came out of our security state after 9/11. So, and Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin just went there as well. In the last couple of days, I think it might have been the last couple of days, if not the last couple of weeks. It's hard to know when you see a story pop up on your feed when it was said and how recent it was said. But Ron Johnson just went there, senator from Wisconsin. In fact, I got to make a personal note here that I got to contact Ron Johnson and see if we can collaborate in this 2026 midterm. I'm not sure if he's up for re-election or not, but either way, it would be great to have his support. I count Ron Johnson as somebody who has a fair bit of credibility and some sacred honor to him. Definitely helped Dr. Pierre Corey, blow the whistle on some of this medical malfeasance and the efficacy of corticosteroids back when the pandemic hit. So I like Ron Johnson. And he said it. He said, hey, this 9/11 thing needs to be looked into. I think there's a lie being told here. So even that now, I mean, you're talking about something that happened nearly 30 years ago. I still remember the day I was sitting in class in the 6th grade. It was probably right around the same time I smacked that damn chip out of that boy's hand for double dipping. But about 12 years old, 11 years old I was when 9/11 happened. And I still live with the we all do. We all do in some respects. People who were old enough to actually remember the day. I remember we went to my grandfather's house. My great-grandfather was still alive, and we went to his house that day, the whole family, extended family. My great-grandfather, so my grandfather is his oldest son, and then my mom is his oldest daughter. And, all the grandkids right there in that generation stopped by my great-grandfather's house, and he talked to us about World War II and the Vietnam War and some of the things that he had lived through at his age, because we all thought we were preparing to go to war, and we were not going to war like some of those wars, a war of a much different variety, but yet and still we ended up in a war that I think even then my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my mother were unbeknownst about how that war would unfold, because it was a new type of warfare, this whole war against terrorism, this kind of faceless enemy that you can't really put a number or a name on. It's like, Saddam Hussein is responsible for 9/11. And then it was he had nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. Then we never found him. Then we killed him. And then it was Osama bin Laden, who, again, like I said many times before, we go into Afghanistan to go get Osama bin Laden. We end up finding him in Pakistan, who we have a relationship with and allowed them a nuclear program. He's at a compound a couple blocks down from a Pakistani military base when we finally find him. Then we kill him, and then we give him a sea burial at night, so none of the American people can even confirm if it was actually him. Okay, so we spent 20 years, and all we got was a sea burial for Osama bin Laden. Then we had the disastrous and disgraceful withdrawal from Afghanistan, in which we left $85 billion of American taxpayer money and still given $15 million conservatively, $20 million conservatively to the Taliban to this very day. And oh, by the way, we killed Muammar Gaddafi as well. I mean, this whole Middle East theater here has got some dark, dark secrets and some very ugly skeletons in it. And I'm glad that it's Republican politicians, congressmen, that are now blowing the whistle on something like 9/11 and saying, hey, we got to figure out if this was actually went down the way that it was. And I'll tell you this, a lot of us already believe that a lot of us are already 9/11 conspiracy theorists, okay, by the mainstream media standard. But I'll tell you this, it is going to shake America to its very foundations if it comes to light that this 9/11 thing was there were lies told, or even more that there was an inside job. It's going to shake America down to its and trust and believe. Before that information comes to light, some people are going to die for it, behind it. So people aren't going to, whoever was involved in that, they ain't going to let that information come to light easily. And I would venture to guess there's some foreign governments and foreign politicians and people like the Epsteins of the world that were involved in that type of thing. It's not Epstein specifically, but those type of people who are kind of involved in clandestine sort of international business / espionage. There's a lot going on there. I had nothing to do with it, so I'm not really worried about it. I'm just saying I don't believe the fucking story either. I don't believe how those towers came down either. When you're fucking 11 and you're watching it on TV, yeah, I mean, you believe it. When you're fucking 20 and you watch the video, it's like watching the fucking moon landings. Now looking back, it's like, there's some of these boomers and some of you still believe the moon landings. Please, for the love of God, go back and watch those moon landing videos. They look ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, it's so fake, it's almost laughable that it ever passed as real. But, in the early days of television, I guess you could pass it for real. But now it's like, come on, dude, that's so fake, it's almost laughable.
Dude, sometimes my Wi-Fi is so slow. You're telling me that they're all the way in space and they could live stream that?
Come on, dude.
Like, no way.
Come on, my guy.
The cars didn't even have
Not
AC
even just
yet.
in space, but the moon.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to get good Wi-Fi, good live streaming from space, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, low orbit space, or let's say just outside the orbit space. The moon is out there.
Yeah.
And then the moon ain't just, okay, we're taking a space shuttle and we've broken into space and now we're on to the moon. No, the moon is a ways.
Yeah.
So to be live streaming from the moon is like, I'm not a flat earther, but come on, guys. I mean, let's
something's being lied about.
Come on, guys. Let's pick up on what's being thrown down right in front of us here. I'm glad there's some people who are credible, right? Like this congressman here and Ron Johnson, who is a legitimate, incredible guy. And he's not a quack. He's not a crazy man. He's very, very smart and very credible, in my opinion. And when these people start asking questions about 9/11, maybe it's time the rest of us do too. Is that the last clip?
That's the last clip.
That's another episode of Please Call Me Crazy reaction episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to get some more reaction clips up for you to share in small, shorter content formats, as well as some medium-sized clips as well, 2 to 3 minutes, because I go on these rants like I did just now about 9/11. And we appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. This Friday, we will have Professor Penn back on for a much anticipated and needed Hebrews episode. We have to talk about some things here regarding Minnesota politics because Professor Penn and I have been out on the campaign trail and have seen some of these things together firsthand. We're going to compare notes. So if you're in Minnesota or if you're outside of Minnesota and you want to hear some of the insider baseball about Republican Party politics, tune in this Friday for an episode of Hebrews. Saturday morning, Real America's Voice. I'll be back for the Royce White Show this week, 9 a.m. Eastern. So we got all that coming up. We appreciate it. I look forward to hopefully getting on with Stephen A. Smith next week. We'll share that with you as well, but I'm sure a lot of you will see that come up because Stephen A. Smith, unlike myself, is not shadow banned by YouTube, and he gets a big old viewership. Steve Bannon's episode is up to about 250,000 views right now on YouTube, so I hope to be able to reach an audience of a similar size, and me and Stephen A. can have a good conversation about where some of these Democrats are headed. And I don't care what they call it. They could be headed into the Independent Party. They could be headed into the Democrat MAGA Party or Maher or whatever it is. I'm just glad that we're shaking this shit up and that finally people are starting to have some much needed conversations like, Is the Democrat Party really a place for black men or any man? Or should we believe the narrative on 9/11? I mean, it's all coming. It's all kind of, coming to a head. And what a time to be alive. I mean, like I said at the start, I'm hopeful. I know a lot of what we talk about is has negative connotation and dark and some scary implications. But overall, I'm hopeful because the first step to a more prosperous, country, more prosperous communities, a more prosperous global society, which I hate to even say because it's like a globalist. Well, but, society, we do have a global society, especially when you can hop on an airplane and be across the entire planet in 10 hours, So we live in a global society by all definition. And the first way to get to a more prosperous society is to have conversations that are right and true, right? That are honest. And I don't care how we get there. And I'm going to be one to kick the door. I'm going to start those fires right here in the Minnesota Republican Party. If you don't like it and you want to go along to get along and you like the, business as usual and, hey, we don't want to call people out. We don't need to be negative. We're all Republicans. No, we're not. No, we have to change the definition of Republican. And that's the only way we can get some of these younger people like Tanner's age who have abandoned the political process because they see you all as being corrupt as fuck, which a lot of you are corrupt as fuck. The only way we can reach them and appeal to them and kind of, brand ourselves to them is to rebrand ourselves, rebrand the Republican Party. No, this isn't the Bush Republican Party who half of you don't believe about 9/11. And I understand why, right? So, I mean, the people who came up under Bush and who think that same way, the Karl Roves and list goes on and on. We have to rebrand the Republican Party in a different way, in the more the Donald Trump way, but it's going to continue to evolve beyond Donald Trump, where we can now take that brand and say, hey, this ain't the Republican Party you're used to hearing about wherever you're used to hearing your politics. That's just an obvious, logical, prudent way to go about politics from a strategic standpoint, and that's what I'm going to do. That's what we're doing here at Free People Radio for the most part, other than cultural commentary, and we enjoy and appreciate all of you for being around and sticking with us. Continue to expand, share, like, comment, clip it. If you want to clip it, clip it. Clip me saying I was smacked the chip out of the kid's hand at 11 years old. I wasn't a mean kid, but I had my pet peeves like everybody does. I could not stand a double dipper. And that was an analogy about our corporations and our China trade policy. China is the threat on the horizon. We have to understand that. I'm going to talk more about that with David Penn on Friday's edition of Hebrews, who has spent about as much time traveling to China as anybody I know. So look forward to that. That's it for me. The fight continues. Godspeed. The people are coming. God bless you all. God bless America. And thank you, Donald Trump, doing a good job so far. We got our criticisms of some of the things, but overall, much, much better than we were doing same time last year. So we'll see you all on Friday night. Have a good one. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.